Let us start by thinking about introductory and key themes into Chapter 1 of Desjardins' Introduction to Business Ethics. In this section, we will cover the following 3 questions. 1, what is ethics? The class is business ethics after all, right? So we would want to know what ethics is. 2, what is success in business? This addresses the second part of the title of our course, Business Ethics. We want to know what roughly business is about and what success in business means. That's how we're going to address this question of what business is about by thinking about what is success in business. 3, we're going to ask and think about, can a person be made moral by thinking or hearing about ethics, say in a class on business ethics? In other words, can just taking one class in business ethics make one into a moral person? Presumably one is moral or not moral as a result of, a lifelong practice that one has been engaged in until now. So can taking a class really be make one into a moral person? All right. So those are the 3 questions we'll be looking at, and let me roughly go into these questions in more detail. Our class concerns itself with the relationship between ethics and business. One way to articulate that relationship is in the form of a series of questions. Can one be ethical and succeed in business? Can one succeed in business without ethics? Or could practicing ethics in business undermine success in business? In other words, can being ethical in business actually hurt one's doing business? As we will discuss later in much greater detail, ethics minimally means treating human beings well as opposed to poorly, or without any concern for how one treats human beings at all. Right? We're addressing here the question of what is ethics. So just one more time. As we will discuss later in much greater detail, ethics minimally means treating human beings well, as opposed to poorly or without any concern at all. Clearly, treating human beings poorly is unethical and immoral, right? Ethics is not simply whatever a person believes ethics is. Those who do not treat human beings well are not acting ethically, regardless of what they may believe. So we're addressing the question of moral relativism here very minimally. Clearly, anyone who treats human beings poorly is not treating them morally, right? Unless we take that as our starting point, we cannot have a meaningful discussion about ethics at all. So one more time. As we will discuss later in much greater detail, ethics minimally means treating human beings well, as opposed to poorly or without any concern at all. Ethics is not simply whatever a person believes ethics is. Those who do not treat human beings well are not treating human beings ethically, as hard as they may believe that treating human beings poorly is what ethics is about. And unless we take that as our starting point, that ethics is about treating human beings well, we cannot have a meaningful discussion about ethics at all. Of course, the real question is about what it means to treat human beings well. I may have one idea about what it means to treat human beings well. Someone else may have another idea of what it means to treat human beings well. So the real question is about what it means to treat human beings well. There is more than one answer here, just as there is more than one theory of ethics that we will cover in class. But that doesn't mean that any idea of treating human beings well is correct. After all, any person could be mistaken in their commitment to what it means to treat human beings well. They could be mistaken, or they could just be self-interested and perhaps even engage in a bit of self-deception. as to what it means, what they think it means to treat human beings well. And so the bet of our class, as is that of all education, is that the more one studies what it means to treat human beings well, the more informed and better is one's judgment about that. In other words, someone who has thought a very long time in the company of others about what it means to treat human beings well, in dialogue with others, is going to be much better at it than someone who has not done it long or with others at all, right? And so that's the bet of all of education as well as of our class. The more one thinks about a topic, seriously thinks about it, the better one becomes at it. Study means that one consults not merely one's own experience and thinking, but that of others, and especially of long traditions that consist of human beings learning from each other for much longer than any of us have been alive. Studying requires humility and not assuming that one has the best answers all on one's own at any one moment. If I already think that I have all the answers to the questions of what it means to treat others well, then why do I need to study or even think about it, right? The very presupposition of being a student is that one does not have all the answers and that one can benefit from a sustained and engaged thinking about the topic and by hearing what others have to say about it as well. In our class, we will develop our opinions in response to the philosophical tradition of thinking about business ethics. That tradition claims to be informed by more than 2,000 years of thinking about human nature, and also by the more contemporary thinking about the evolving situation of doing business. In other words, we're not simply thinking in the company of others, we're thinking and the company of a 2,000-year-old tradition of people responding to, refuting, and taking the best of what others have to say with regard to ethics, and more specifically with regard to business ethics. But it's not just about the past 2,000 years. It's also about being informed by contemporary issues and contemporary thinking about business ethics. Likewise, there's also a question here of what it means to speak of business success. Does it mean long-term success of a single venture, or does it mean short-term successes and failures of many small ventures, one after another, so long as one gains more than one loses? The discussion of the issue in our class seems to place more emphasis on the former as the better conception of the business success. In other words, if one starts a new business and fails year after year after year after year, again and again and again and again, should we really, even if one makes profits, should we really speak of that person as a successful business person? You start one venture this year, then you run it into the ground. You start another venture and you run it into the ground. But of course, you bail out right before running it into the ground actually means financial losses, right? So you can be starting and stopping again and again and again and still be in the plus as far as the profits are concerned. So do we want to say that that's what we mean by success in business? Or do we want to say that rather having a sustained over a long period of time business is what we mean by success in business? Seems like the latter option would be more aligned with being successful as well as ethical in business. One last point here to address, perhaps, is whether the kind of a discussion we will have can turn an immoral person into a moral person. Some thinkers think that that is precisely the point of such discussions as ours of morals. Other thinkers take it that discussions of morals are aimed at persons who already strive to act morally and can benefit from further reflection on what that means in general and in specific situations. In other words, is it the case that one is not particularly moral and Voila, one becomes moral as a result of taking a class in ethics. Or is it the case that the class is really for those who are already striving to be moral, and the class then just clarifies for them what it means to be moral? Let me rephrase that. Can the class change an immoral person from being immoral to being moral? Is that what the class is for? Or is it the case that the class is for those people who are already making an effort and striving to be moral, and the class just helps them see a bit clearer what it would mean to be moral in business? I give a lot of weight to the second view, with an addendum that I think that most of us would prefer to act morally, according to what really is moral, rather than not.